Welcome to Digital Communication Strategies for Theatre Professionals. In this session of the course, we are going to talk about building relationship with institutional media. And by institutional media, I mean your local radio station, your national broadcaster, one of the national newspapers, maybe an independent podcast, or something similar like that. I hope you already have your communication strategies. And I also hope that in those communication strategies, one of the channels that you identified for yourself is media outlets or the so-called institutional media outlets. Because those media outlets, the editors of those media outlets are your gatekeepers, very important gatekeepers for you when you're trying to reach a broader audience, a wider array of people, not just the people that you in your neighborhood or know you through your friends or colleagues, but people who maybe live far away from you and have never heard about you and your work. And those institutional media outlets with big audiences, national audiences, sometimes international audiences, can help you reach those audiences and spread the word about your work among them, right? So before you actually send any piece of information to those media outlets, you have to ask yourself, is it just dry information that is, just like any other piece of information? Or is it actually news? Because there are certain parameters, I'm going to talk about 4 of them, that defined a news story. So first of all, timeliness. Is it the right time to talk about this particular news item that you have? Right? For example, you want to let the people know about a new show coming up, about a premiere, an opening of the show. When do you do that? 2 years before the opening? Maybe a little bit too early. 1 day before the opening? Maybe a little too late, right? So when is the right time to talk about the thing that you want to talk about? This is a very important aspect of your press releases or your news stories, because if it's too late, if it's too early, then it's going to be identified as irrelevant by the editors of the media outlet that you're interested in. The second aspect of a news story is proximity. Just as you have a certain target audience for your work or your company or your venue, media outlets have also their own target audiences. And they want to be relevant for those target audiences, which means that every news item or every news story that they're publishing or broadcasting or airing has to create that feeling or give that impression to the audience that it can somehow affect them. Maybe they can go and see the show. Maybe they can listen to an interview or get an autograph from a star. And maybe it solves a certain issue or talks about a certain issue that is very close and very relevant to that audience. Maybe they can take someone on a date there. Maybe they can send their children to that show, right? It has to be relevant somehow to the audience, because if it's just interesting but very far away, it will not affect the audience in any way. Then again, it will be written off as irrelevant by the editor. The third aspect I want to talk about is uniqueness. Of course, you have to ask yourself, is the news item that you want to communicate to a media outlet just another piece of information? Or is it really unique? Is it something unusual? Is it something that the audience hasn't heard or seen before? And of course, just as conflict drives every good drama, conflict drives every good news story too. And it doesn't have to be, a physical fight that you want to talk about. It can be a conflict that you had as a creator when creating this piece of work. It can be a conflict between you and maybe local authorities that you had to overcome or to resolve when creating this piece. It can be, of course, a conflict that this piece of work can potentially invoke in the society, in public discussions, public discourse. But a good conflict is something that the editors are looking for when reading your news items, and it is very important to have that in mind. Then, of course, you have to define your goals. Why are you communicating this piece of news to an editor? Do you want to sell more tickets? Do you want to get more attention for your company, your work, the cast that you're involving in the production, or do you want to solve a problem? For example, a problem of funding of independent theater companies, a problem of venues for independent theater companies, a problem of networking opportunities for playwright or something like that, right? Because of course we want to sell tickets, but not all of us are producers, or not all of us run venues, right? And even if we do run venues or produce theater shows, we don't have a premiere coming up every week, right? But we still have to sustain that relationship with the media, and we still have to be in the public discourse somehow, right? So then we have to ask, what other goals can I have to, and what news items I can provide, having in mind these goals. And of course, when you decided on your goals and you are sure that you have your news story, then you have to craft a press release. And just as a sonnet has a structure, a press release also has a pretty stable structure that editors of the media outlet that you're sending this press release to are going to be looking for in your write-up. So first of all, the 5 W's: who, when, what, where, why. And that's called, as you can see in the visual, the most newsworthy information. And that's very often the only information that the editors are going to read in your write-up. Because if in the first paragraph of your press release, they cannot see answers to those 5 questions, who, when, what, where, why, they will not continue reading, right? So you have to be very clear what is your main event or what is your main message at the very beginning of your press release. Then you can add on important details, and at the very end to add background information, for example, to remind the editor of your company what it does, when it was established. Add some quotes. Quotes is something that is very appealing to the editors and the audience, because as I said already in session 1, we all want to know that there are human beings behind every news item and every show or every product that we are buying, right? So quotes is always something, authentic quotes, interesting quotes, is something that is very much appreciated by the editors, right? But you always have to start with the 5 W's. But even before that, the editors will see your title. And if your title is not clear and it's not concise and it doesn't communicate the main message that you want to communicate in the press release, your editor may not even open your press release. And just think about yourself, how you consume the news on your social media or wherever you get your news from. You very often decide against reading an article because you do not like the title. So you have to write a title for your press release with that consumption pattern in mind, right? So you have to, if you want to talk about a certain star that's going to be featured in your show, the name of that star has to be in your title. If you want to talk about certain social issue that surrounds your production, that social issue has to be mentioned in the title. If you want to talk about a certain conflict that you cannot resolve as an artist, that conflict has to be mentioned in the title. Do not be metaphorical and poetic in this case. And do not be too wordy, right? Too many words is also, will also put off the editor. So be concise, be clear, but also intriguing, right? And this is also, part of the craft of public relations or your publicist, right? To come up with those titles that will communicate the message and will help understand the uniqueness of your news item or news story, right? So now we have the press release. That's really good, but we have to send out this press release to certain people who are most likely to publish it in their media outlets or tell about it in their television show or radio podcast, right? And it's very important to understand and remember that there are living human beings behind those big brands of media outlets or media conglomerates. So take the time to find out who are actually the people who would be, or the editors who would be most interested in your story, right? And address them personally in the email. If there's a certain John Smith in your local newspaper who writes about local productions, you address him by his name. Dear John, I'm sending you this information because I'm an avid reader of your column. I've been following what you're going to write and what you're writing about. And I think this information could really be a good fit for your column, right? Make sure that John knows that you know him, right? Another very important piece of advice, add your press release in the form of a Word document to your email, because every news or media outlet have their own content management system. So they will have to reformat your text for that content management system, right? So if you send a PDF on a JPEG or a PNG, it's going to be very difficult for them to do anything with that text, right, itself. And very often they will not bother, right? So let's be editor friendly. Let's understand the deadline pressures and the all sorts of other pressures that they're under, and let's help them, right? Let's have a nice Word document from which they can copy and paste into their content management system. Do not forget to identify the main person of contact at your organization for the editor, right? So maybe the editor sees that, oh, it is really an interesting problem that this artist wants to solve. Maybe I can do something more with it. Maybe I can prepare an additional, episode of my talk show or podcast devoted only to that problem. But then I have to, or maybe I want to interview that artist, and do a longer piece, not just a press release about him or her. Who do I contact? Who is that person who will always pick up the phone or check the email and answer my questions? So it's very important to identify that person at the bottom of your press release. And of course, attach a visual. Visuals are essential in contemporary communication. All media outlets, all readers, all viewers, no matter where they get their information, are looking for visuals, and they're paying attention to a visual even before the title very often, right? So work on your visuals. They have to be, there are certain technical aspects that you have to think about. So first of all, make sure that your visual is horizontal, because as you can see in the visual, or the print screen of the Lithuanian national broadcaster that I just grabbed and I'm showing to you here, you can see here that all the pictures are usually presented horizontally, right? They have to be, of course, of a good quality, well, more or less 1 megabyte, and they preferably should feature people, because we as audience members are always looking for people, faces of people, or little animals in this particular case that you see at the lower right bottom of the visual, are more interesting to us than, let's say, a power plant that you can also see among the pictures here. So people are much more interested than plants, or landscapes, or sunsets, or beaches. try to illustrate your piece of news with a human face or a human interaction. That is very important, right? It's also important that it's not just a very kind of passport like picture, but that you can see an emotion in these people that are portrayed in the pictures. Now, some essential tips when you communicate with the editors and are building relationships with those editors. Of course, you have to choose the right media outlets for your information. Maybe it's not that interesting for internet. Maybe it's more interesting for radio because you can sing something or play a song. Maybe it's more interesting for television because you can show something. I don't know, play a game or give out prizes or I don't know, act a little bit, right? So bear in mind that there's more than one form, right, or shape of communication in media. There's internet, there's podcast, there's radio, there's television. So maybe you can offer something for each of these, right? And also, as I said already before, bear in mind the target audience of that particular media outlet. Is it the kind of audience that would be interesting in your news? Be as clear as possible. We already talked about that. Do not leave too much for interpretation for the editor, because the editors do not have time for that. They have to understand your information, I know, within first 15 seconds of reading it. So try to be very clear. Be accessible, as I said, if the editor wants to ask follow-up questions or to invite your cast member for an interview or to interview you, maybe you have to be available, right? You have to be accessible to answer emails, to answer phone calls, right? So make sure that you're accessible during that time when you want to communicate to an editor. Be appreciative. Everybody likes the thank you note. So if an editor decided to publish your press release or to, invite you for an interview or expressed any kind of interest in your story, write a thank you note. Maybe call them and say, thank you very much. I appreciate your attention. I hope we're going to, continue collaborating in the future. This one thank you note will go very far. Of course, you have to have in mind the time when you send your information. So if you send your information, I don't know, 2 minutes before the actual premiere, for example, then of course, the editor will not have the time to process that information and to kind of publish it. If you send it very late at night at 1 a.m., it probably will go to the bottom of all the emails or the mailbox of that particular day, right? When the editor opens that mailbox at the beginning of the day. So also look at that particular media outlet to which you're sending your story and see the time patterns, the workflow that they follow, right? Because you can see now on the internet, especially the times when information is being published, right? And try kind of cater for those times. And of course, build relationships. So do not just send a piece of information and expect, like a prayer to God and expect that something will happen, but say, well, this is the information about a particular premiere, for example, that I want to send you. But we also can, arrange interviews with those people. We also can do supporting stories about the themes that we're covering in that show. Do not sit passively and wait for the editor to come up with all those things. Suggest these things actively so that the editor knows that he or she can rely on you and on your collaboration in kind of, following through with the story, because the press release is only one little droplet in the sea of information. You want to sustain your story. You want maybe to write follow-up articles or do follow-up interviews. Suggest those to the editor. Again, he or she will be very appreciative. So what is it that media is interested in? Of course, media just outlets, just as you, are interested in audience development. So they always, when they review all the hundreds of press releases that they get every day, they ask themselves, will this help me increase the loyalty of my audience? Will it maybe expand my audience? Will it be relevant for my audience, right? So this is what every editor is asking him or herself. Do not forget to share, if a media outlet publishes your story, do not forget to share it on your communication channels and tag that editor or media outlet, right? They will know, right? And usually media outlets follow that pattern or what you do with their information. And if they know that you are going to share it and you're going to invite your readers and your immediate audience to read their material, they are more likely to publish it next time. Of course, every media outlet is more interested in problems or conflicts than just plain information or promotion, right? Because as you know yourself as readers or consumers of media, that you sense the promotional nature of any piece of information very fast, and then you are just not interested in it, right? You just scroll past it or skip it, right? So as I said, try to find that problem or that conflict in your news story that you want to communicate. Do not just present the editor with a piece of dry information, or promotional material. Of course, every media outlet are looking for quality content. They want to do as little corrections and as little editing as possible. So make sure that your grammar is correct. Make sure that you use interesting language. Make sure that there's a flow to your story, even if it's a press release. And then, of course, the most appealing kind of things for the media outlets are hero personalities and pioneers. So if you are somebody who does something for the first time, make sure to let the media know, right? Because they're interested in those pioneers and those people who go in front of the crowd. And of course, if you have interesting personalities or heroes, connected with your service and with your production, make sure to let media outlets know that they can, write about them or interview them, because everyone is looking for personalities, authentic and interesting personalities nowadays, right? So I think that's very important to bear in mind and to kind of offer to editors. And most importantly, there's the biggest shift probably in the relationship building between, service providers or artists and media is co-creation. The media is, because there's so much content that media needs every day because of digitization, they're very welcome in co-creation. Maybe you can offer a podcast from your theater organization that you can, do weekly for that media outlet. Maybe you can offer for them to come with their cameras and broadcast your production live exclusively. Maybe you can, do a series of article about particular, aspects of your production or the issues that you want to cover in your productions. That will always be very welcome. So because, the rate of the amount of attention paid to press releases is very low, because a press release is just the information. But if you can sustain that, if you can make a bigger series of content based on that information that you delivered in your press release, that's going to be much, much more interesting for any media outlet. So do not be afraid to offer co-creation, right? And to offer content yourselves as content creators for that particular media outlet or outlets of your choice. So that's it. I hope that helps you build better relationships with media outlets of your choice. And let's practice. Take the press release structure that I'm uploading here below this lesson, and try to craft a press release. Try to find a news story and craft a press release for a media outlet of your choice. And then when you have that press release, try to write a company email for an editor of your choice. Feel free to upload your assignment onto this platform and I will give you feedback. Good luck.